the Liberals are just masters of the political game. And it's a game. I'm not saying they're good governors. They're not good at running a government. I'm opposed to just about every decision and policies they've put out and the way they run our country. But the game of politics, oh fuck, they ran it good. They run it good. They're dirty, they're fucking sneaky, and they'll do what's needed. And they managed to hijack the entire narrative. This was Trump versus a mini Trump. Which do you want to fight Trump or do you want to have the mini Trump? And for some reason, Carney is the only one who can fight Trump. And I mean, we saw it like a week ago. He met with the president at the White House, and it seemed like a little kid versus like Goliath. You know what I mean? It was like this little emasculated guy that put in three sentences and that got like smacked around.
Elliot Daigneault, we return back again in the rubble of the Canadian election. How you doing, my brother?
Well, a little not as good as last time because I'm back in Canada, and also, like you said, we're in the aftermath of the we're the post-Canadian election. I guess we'll talk a little bit about that. But aside from that, everything's good. How about you? How are things in Alberta?
I mean, everybody's talking about getting the fuck out of Canada, which is kind of strange. I mean, well, not strange because everybody's been talking about that for like the last 10 years, but now it's like there's like this urgency to like leave. And yeah, you can really feel it in the air. There's a lot of unrest. A lot of people are really upset. And, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, we're really early into this government, and Mark Carney just announced his new cabinet, which is the old cabinet. Same people, same shit, different toilet, right?
Minus Chrystia Freeland, who got backstabbed, but that's another story.
No, she's the transport minister. Minister
of
Oh,
she's the
Transportation.
transport minister. Okay, so she's in the cabinet then.
Yeah, she like, just so that we date this podcast episode, she was sworn in this morning.
Oh well, I guess it's welcome back, Christy. She fucked up the finances, so I can't wait for all transport to be fucked up as well.
So you did this wicked video, man. Like, you and Carla Joy Treadway, and there's a handful of people that I really love watching the stuff you guys produce because you guys just pack it with information. And you specifically, you like to dig into the data, look at the details. For people listening to this, if you're interested in going into the details, the Right Call podcast is perfect for that. Yourself and Curtis. I still can't fucking believe that guy was thinking about voting Liberal. I got a beef with him on that, but
I gotta tell you a little bit of a backstory behind that. I gotta tell you, the truth is, and maybe he's not gonna want me to say this, but fuck it, we're coming out live here. So right before shooting the episodes, like, Elliot, I think I'm gonna tell everyone I'm voting Liberal, just like ruffle their feathers. I'm like, look, it's gonna get people riled up for sure. I was like, I'm not actually gonna do it, but I think I'm just gonna mention it. I'm gonna play devil's advocate today. Like, you do it. And it's hilarious, the reaction, for real, because there were comments on the video saying like, fucking unfollowing you guys, I can't believe it. We lost like about 200 followers
No
after that
way.
video aired. Yeah.
No
So,
way.
I mean, look, the moral of the story here is that, look, obviously, I think conservatives and people on the right are better at accepting differences than liberals. Liberals, it's honestly, it's like either you're with us or you're a Nazi. It's black or white. But even on the right, sometimes, guys, keep an open mind. We're not gonna start treating people that way, right? Like, if Curtis wants to vote Liberal, he's entitled. I mean, he comes from a riding, believe me, we're in Lac St. Louis here, right? So that's the West Island of Montreal. It's diehard Liberal. It's been a Liberal stronghold now for like 40 years, right? And it's not even close. Not even close. And that's coming from a guy where my buddy was running for the Conservative Party. Yeah. I voted for my friend. I went to school with him. It was awesome to watch him go. Got a lot of behind the scenes kind of like information of how a campaign is run. But I mean, ultimately, there's no winning. So the side note is, guys, take it easy. We're all allowed to vote for who we want. But yes, he voted Conservative in the end. Just put
yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'm not even going to say good because you're making a really good point. Like, that's democracy, right? Like, you have your options and people have their reasons for voting for a specific candidate. And, I wrote a piece in the days after the election where I went pretty hard on Liberal voters. But now that the dust has settled and the smoke has cleared, it look, at the end of the day, we got what we got, right? We are where we are now. And I, I want
No,
to
but
be
I understand
optimistic.
your
Yeah.
feeling. To be quite honest with you, I get your feeling. I'm not saying that liberal voters. Look, I have my beef with them as well, and I have my qualms, quite deep, as a matter of fact. My, I've made videos that talks about how I think Canadians, exhibit very strong herd mentality. But ultimately, we're not going to get people to come to our side and to change their mind by attacking them. That's just sad, but it's true, You're actually just going to polarize them even more. So it's about being accepting, it's about trying to understand, it's about dialogue. And the best way to change someone's mind is to use the Socratic method, ask questions. Why did you vote liberal? How was the economy the last 10 years? Did we do good? Has our GDP fallen behind? Are people struggling? And then you slowly lead them to make their own conclusion that, wait a second, shit's fucked, but it has to come from them because you can't force feed it down their throat. It's never going to work.
Well, the frustrating part about it is for the last 10 years or so, we've all been pointing to the left as being, this ideological cult, right? Like the cult of woke. But
Yeah.
what we've seen develop in response to it is the right wing cult. There's this cult now where Trump can do no wrong, and Pierre
Mm.
Poilievre is a demigod, and he was this Canada's savior. And you're seeing this personality cult develop around the right as well, and it's a bummer because I really felt like, I originated on the left, and I moved toward the middle naturally as I matured, but then I started to lean more conservative because I saw the havoc that the left had, reaped on the world.
Mm.
But now, like, I'm looking at the people on the right, and I'm like, you're a mirror image of what happened on the left, which
Yeah.
the term woke right has been thrown around quite a bit. I would like to give myself credit as one of the originators of it. I used that
Sure.
phrase well over a year ago. People can go back through my timeline. I know that other people picked up on it because I know they saw me use it. So I'm not going to say I'm the originator, but I will say I'm one of the first
Should
people to use it.
trademark it and not charge royalties.
But what I was talking about when I said the woke right, I was talking about the same thing, this extreme right wing viewpoint, this cult that's developed around conservatism. And now you're seeing it everywhere, right? And it's kind of taking the form of white Christian nationalism, which is fucking terrifying. That's the furthest extreme of the right, which, people, if you're watching this, the political spectrum is a circle. So if you have communists here, then you have fascists here, and that's where the right is going. It's the boomerang effect. And
Yeah.
so I don't use woke right in the same way that I see it being used online by other writers and commentators, but that's what it's turning into. And so now in Canada, we have a return to the same. We have 4 more years of Liberals. And you're seeing this cult in Canada develop where it's like, if you voted Liberal, fucking die.
Yeah.
And, I look, I've contributed to this as well myself, and in the things that I've written, I referred to them as zombies because I really did feel that way. And I still do feel that way, that a lot of those people were zombie voters. They didn't really know. They just voted for what's safe. Elliot, do you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, Canadians, I think the old adage that Canadians never vote for something, they vote against something
Yeah.
is very true. And they voted against Trump somehow. Don't ask me how, but this election became about fucking Trump. And there's a subsect of this population that is scared shitless of Donald Trump for some reason. Again, I don't know why. And they want to stick it to him. Like it's almost vindictive. They want to stick it to him because he's so bad and he's done us so wrong. And I'm like, well, what has he done? The tariffs. I'm like, okay, you want to dig a little deeper? There's reason behind it. But regardless, the media was really good at stroking that flame. The Liberal Party was, and Curtis, I'll give him credit for that. My co-host on the Right Call podcast, he says it out loud, and I agree with him. The Liberals are better at playing politics than conservatives. The Liberals are just masters of the political game, and it's a game. I'm not saying they're good governors. They're not good at running a government. I'm opposed to just about every decision and policies they put out and the way they run our country. But the game of politics, oh fuck, they ran it good. They run it good. They're dirty, they're fucking sneaky, and they'll do what's needed. And they managed to hijack the entire narrative. This was Trump versus a mini Trump which do you want to fight Trump or do you want to have the mini Trump? And for some reason, Carney is the only one who can fight Trump. And I mean, we saw it like a week ago. He met with the president at the White House, and it seemed like a little kid versus like Goliath. You know what I mean? It was like this little emasculated guy that put in 3 sentences and that got like smacked around. But hey, control the narrative, you control the message. And yeah, so there's zombie voters for sure in Canada. I agree, but it's just Canadians are easily scared. We saw it during the pandemic. It's easy to strike the flame of fear in Canadians, and ultimately they'll go towards whoever promises them safety and security. And the Liberals, they keep doing that. It's a shame.
It really is. And I don't know if you heard, but there were news leaked that there was a conversation between Carney and Trump during Carney's campaign, where he basically advised Trump, "Hey, I'm going to go hard on you, and we're going to deal with this after the election, but let's make a deal." So essentially, the thing that drives me crazy is the whole playing politics thing, because the idea is these people are going to lie through their teeth to get elected. And then once elected, they're going to be doing something totally different. And people are just aware of that. Like, oh, they're going to say what they need to say to get elected, but don't worry, they don't really mean that shit.
Yeah.
Once they're elected, they're gonna steer the ship in the other direction. And it's like, why are we in this position where we've come to expect our political candidates and our politicians to be openly lying to us in order to manipulate us into voting for them? That's a problem. And
a huge problem. Huge. But that's I guess the downside. That's the weakness of democracy. And maybe it's going to be a little controversial, but I'm not a huge fan of democracy. Now, mind you, we're not a true democracy in the sense it's not one vote, one equal vote for equal representation, right? We work on a first past the post system and a parliamentary system, blah blah blah. I mean, there's very few real true democracies. I think the only one that's somewhat semi-democratic is Switzerland, where they have direct democracy to an extent. But nonetheless, I'm not a huge fan of democracies because it's flawed. It's all about, ultimately, it's about herd mentality. How can you convince people? It's a popularity contest. It's not a contest of ideas, a contest of competencies, a contest of skills. It's rather who can appeal the most to a voter base. People will rather hear comforting lies than inconvenient truths, and even more so in Canada. And ultimately, I think it's completely flawed. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that a dictatorship's any better. Obviously, there's plenty of flaws there too. And I mean, again, this is something that a lot of the great philosophers really dug in. Again, speaking of Socrates, again, he was not a fan of democracy. And he was obviously not a fan of monarchies either, for very obvious reasons. And he was not also a fan of necessarily professional politicians. But he's like, there's elements of good in all of them, and that's why he advocated for a king with a senate with a also elected body. So you're kind of like having three things. The Senate was career scholars and thinkers and experts who would hold a position, pretty much for life, and they were not subject to the whims of the population, but he could bring forethoughts and he could bring, a well-reasoned argument. Then you had an elected body, which, again, it's to represent the little people. Everyone has a vote. And then there was a king or a ruler or a consul, whatever you want to call it, that wielded some form of absolute power as well, and that could not be swayed by just the feelings of the moment. And I think the US, they try to sort of embody such a thing. You have the House of Representatives, which is pretty much the elected body. It's every state, depending on their population, get more or less vote. The Senate, which ultimately is supposed to represent the states. Now, the Senate changed a bit because initially at the creation of the US, the Senate, 2 senators per per state, sorry, they were appointed by the state legislature. So they were professional politicians, basically. Effectively, that's what it was. Now it's elected by the population, so it's a little bit different. But initially, it was supposed to be a professional position to represent the interests directly of the state. And then you had the president that wields tremendous power. I mean, most countries, a president does not have that much executive power. It's mostly a figurehead. But in the US, the president wields incredible powers. And he creates a nice separation. Canada, we don't have quite that, sadly, right? Once you have a majority government, you have, for lack of better words, pretty much a dictatorship. You can pass any legislations you want. You can appoint pretty much any judicial you want. You can, well, you run the executive as well. So you have very little challenges. And that's why I think it's a dangerous system in Canada. And the check and balance that we're supposed to have, which is the monarchy or the governor general, that's supposed to be there in the last ditch effort to prevent corruption or to prevent abuse, and which has been done in the past, but that is seldom the case nowadays. I mean, I would venture to say that proroguing Parliament the way Trudeau did and the way the Liberals did was not in the best interest of the country. It was purely a political play to save the Liberal Party. And that should have been refused by the Governor General. The Governor General should have said, I refuse to prorogue Parliament. You guys go back in the fucking house and make shit happen. But that last little check and balance failed. And we're in a place right now in Canada where there's so much apathy in the whole system that we're devolving very quickly into a very corrupted state.
Dude, that is beautiful. You nailed it. Now, why do you think the Governor General didn't force them to get back into Parliament and solve these issues?
Probably twofold. Again, as time goes by, there's more and more reservation to wield those exceptional reserve powers. Effectively, they're reserve powers of the crown. And there's always been a lot of hesitation to use them because it always kind of creates a scandal. The last time it was used was decades and decades and decades ago. But they're there for a reason. Like the entire Westminster parliamentary system of government uses and puts a sovereign in place specifically for those exceptions. So I think there's a fear of retaliation. It's hard to do the right thing. It's not a popular thing to do the right thing. And I think the Governor General position now has devolved into more of a truly a figurehead rather than someone who holds a very important office and who should be willing, capable, and ready to do what's unpopular to safeguard the country and to safeguard democracy. But sadly now it's more about, well, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to be seen poorly. I don't want my legacy to be tainted. It's oftentimes people that are at the end of their career. It's kind of like a bringing you out to pasture gracefully kind of position. So there's that, number one. Number two, I think it's also the fact that, obviously the Governor General, the Vice Regal in Canada, is appointed by, well, it's appointed by the king, technically, but on recommendation of the prime minister, right? So for all, the case in point is that it's pretty much the prime minister that decides. So, I mean, if you're the prime minister, you're going to put, look, I'm going to say something controversial, okay? Right now, I own some buildings, right? I'm in the process of renting out one of the units that's vacant, and there's a housing crisis, so there's no shortage of applicants, right? I get dozens of candidates a day. And to be quite honest with you, I weed them out based on how docile, subservient, and submissive they can be. It sounds really fucked up, but I don't want a fucking tenant who's going to be up my ass, who's going to say this is broken or my rights are this and that. I want someone who shuts the fuck up and takes anything I put onto them. I'm going to increase the rent. They're going to shut the fuck up and take it. I'm going to put minimum amount of work in the building. They'll shut the fuck up and take it. It's really fucked up, but that's what I want. I don't want an annoying tenant that, is up my ass. Well, if you're the prime minister and you're going to appoint effectively your boss, right? Ultimately your fucking boss, what are you going to do? Are you going to put someone who's going to be strong, who's going to be unwavering, and who's going to hold you to account? Or are you going to put some fucking dummy, some sheep who's just going to bend over and say, effectively a yes man, or in our case, a yes woman? Well, fuck, especially Trudeau and the Liberals, they're going to put a yes woman in place. So I think those are the two reasons: fear of retribution or doing what's right, even though it's unpopular. And two, just the person that is chosen on behalf of the prime minister. And once again, and that leads sadly to also, technically it's the king who's supposed to appoint the vice regal on recommendation. But now it's pretty much a rubber stamp. The king should have been, are you sure this is the right woman? Give me instead a list of 10 appointments, and I'm going to interview them myself and make my final decision as the sovereign of the country. But of course, that's not what happens because, again, they're so far removed from Canadian politics. And so it creates a situation where, effectively, again, we don't have that last final check and balance, and it leads to what I think abuse of power, which is hurting us all. Long-winded answer. Sorry for that, but
No, that was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're still part of the British Commonwealth has always annoyed me. It's always irritated me because it's like, I don't give a fuck about the king. I know you don't. None of us do. I know nothing about the British monarchy, and
it's don't tread on me,
well,
motherfucker.
there it is, right? But I know nothing about the British monarchy. I have zero interest in them. I don't care what happens to them. They could all fall off a bridge at the same time, and I wouldn't even blink, right? So,
Be careful. That could be considered high treason in the
but
country.
you know what I'm saying? So why? And I feel like this is the case for most Canadians. Like, most of us don't even really think about the fact that we still have any connections to the United Kingdom. So why are we still doing this with them? Like, why are we still playing this game? And this, this position of the Governor General now being basically uh, at the calling of the Prime Minister. It kind of, like you just explained, it makes the position null and void. It's irrelevant, right?
Because initially, again, when it was created, it was supposed to be, again, the last resort of a tyrannical or a corruptible government. And in history, and I've looked into it, I find it so fucking fascinating. I've looked into it. Governor generals back in the day used to be much more involved, and they would exercise their power in exceptional cases, but they would. They've dissolved parliament, they've refused royal assent to laws, and they've also refused to appoint certain positions, senators, you name it, and or to they force prime ministers to call for an election, saying no, it's a fuck you, we're out of there, new election. But hey, look, let's put it this way: you guys in Alberta, you have the momentum to perhaps really secede from this whole bullshit. What do you think of that?
I mean, I'm all for it personally. But see, I'm a different animal because I lived in the United States for a long time.
Mhm.
And I know how much better life is there. Look, the US isn't a perfect place, and you want to talk about political corruption, that is the heart of the rot globally, right?
Mm.
But just in terms of quality of life, in terms
Yeah,
of, we talked about this last time, healthcare, in terms of your dollar going further, being able to do
yeah.
more, being an entrepreneur. I mean, you and I both own businesses,
Mm.
right? And just what you can do with just an idea in the
For
US,
sure.
right? And so I've never really viewed myself as being Canadian because I've had a hard time defining being a Canadian is and what it means. And as our identity was brought into question over the last 6 months or 4 months, I saw that most Canadians didn't know how to define themselves. We always fall back on this, the definition of being Canadian being not American. Well, what the fuck does that even mean? What does that mean?
That's the
Right?
number one answer. It's always that. Well, we're not America.
What the
Okay.
fuck does that mean? So what? You're second best, maybe third best, fourth? Like, what are you talking about? And
Mm.
that's like, now more than ever, I'm like, yeah, I'm a person, I'm a citizen of the world. Sure, my passport says Canada on it, but if I tell you I'm Canadian, how does that define me
Mm.
or my perspective? It doesn't define anything.
So would you then, okay, so in the event, because okay, correct me, maybe it's spoken more in Alberta. Again, here in Quebec, where we fucking the news is even more co-opted than CBC, okay? It's
Right.
on a whole other fucking level.
Right.
I mean, the Journal de Montréal, the Montreal newspaper, after Carney met with Trump, posted front and center, like front page, Trump 0, Carney 1. Like,
God.
okay, sure. Okay, buddy,
Wow.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like it's yeah. But so what's going on with the Alberta independence, right? I heard that Daniel Smith, your premier, lowered the threshold for a citizen referendum, correct?
Yes.
Or a citizen
Yes.
initiative, sorry, right? For a referendum.
Yeah.
And is there enough signatures right now that have been collected for such a thing?
I don't believe that they've. I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't believe that they've triggered that part of it yet. It's a slow process, but there is a
Okay.
new political party I believe, called the APP. I might be wrong, but there's a new political group that's gaining steam out here because look, Albertans at the end of the day are just eager to get the fuck out. And I was back in Vancouver last week and I talked to a lot of people and everybody in Vancouver is eager to leave too. BC's ready to go based on the sample that I had access to. But if you even look at the way it panned out in the federal election, BC went mostly conservative. I think what happened was the most people are fucking tired in BC.
Yeah.
They're tired of this shit. And I think the money laundering, the fact that you can't buy a home there, the fact that there are tent cities on every single block almost in the city.
Insane.
It's gotten to a point where even the far left British Columbians, the far left people in Vancouver have had to admit to themselves that this isn't working, that we have a serious problem here and the Liberals are not in any position to fix it, nor are the NDP. Not to mention the fact that BC's economy, outside of the money laundering, outside of the real estate, is very heavily reliant on natural resources.
Right? Oh yeah, their number one export is fucking coal.
Right. So they've come to realize that, like, hey, if we keep going down this road, we're fucked. Yeah. And I think that the lefties in British Columbia are going to surprise people. As if Alberta gets a referendum and if we vote to leave, which again, I'm very skeptical on, because I think Danielle Smith can be very wishy-washy when it comes like to when the rubber meets the road. She sometimes will pull back, and I get it. I mean, it's politics, but people in Alberta, we're fucking done, man. Like, we're just done.
I don't blame you guys. I dug into. Oh, sorry. Keep going.
No, I was just gonna say. So I think, if we get that, so she lowered the threshold for the signatures. I think we need 177,000 signatures to trigger a referendum, and then she extended the time period from 90 to 120 days. Okay. So I think if we get enough signatures on that petition, which in Alberta, like, dude, you could go to the mall and get 177,000 signatures.
West Edmonton Mall, let's do it.
Right, you know what I mean? But I think if we trigger a referendum and we vote yes to leave, which is again that's a big hurdle, because there are a lot of people in Alberta who are married to the idea of being Canadian, even the people that you think wouldn't be, right? So that's a huge hurdle. But if we get over that hurdle, we get the yes vote, we begin secession, I honestly think BC is going to follow almost immediately. They'll hold their own referendum, because look, man, the writing is on the wall. And you and Curtis on the Right Call podcast in your last episode raised some good points about the ESG SDG stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Mark Carney doesn't believe in this shit. Nobody believes in this shit. None of the bankers, none of the corporations involved, none of them believe in this shit. It's just a way to make more money. And what you brought up a good point in terms of stock, or maybe it was Curtis, in terms of stock value. If your company is ESG approved, the stock value increases, right? So it's all a big scam. Nobody believes in this. Mark Carney doesn't. But the fact remains that Mark Carney and Brookfield are heavily invested in Chinese real estate and Chinese fossil fuels, also heavily invested in Western renewable clean energy projects, right? So it is in their best interest to crash Canada's natural resource economy, make us reliant on Chinese fossil fuels, while at the same time pushing people to transition into these renewable energy products that he and Brookfield are invested in. I mean, he and Brookfield are literally going to make billions and trillions of dollars. And for everybody who's sitting there listening to this going, all of his assets are in a blind trust, shut the fuck up. If you think he has nothing to do with Brookfield or any of his investments anymore, you're out of your fucking mind. You're retarded.
Absolutely. It's
right?
Those are people that are, again, sorry, but those are the gullible Canadians who just believe everything at face value. Look, listen, having your assets in a blind trust only means that you don't have control of it for a period of time. Nothing stops you from calling the fucking trustee, unofficially, going for coffee with him and being like, all right, cool, so this is what I think you should do. I'm not telling you what to do, but I think if I was in your position, I would, guys, it's done like this. It's done like fucking that. You know what I mean? Come on.
Right. Like, if you think he's not picking up the phone and calling the trustee and, giving instructions,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. What's gonna happen? The trustee is gonna be like, "Oh, this is a conflict of interest. I'm not supposed to do it." Like, fuck off, dude.
Right. Hey, Mark, listen, I know I'm managing this $1 billion fund for you right now, but we really shouldn't be talking about this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just like, but that's the point. The point is that Mark Carney and all of the banking elite that he's surrounded by do not believe in ESGs or SDG. It's just another scheme. It's another shell game. So the point is with Alberta, we are directly in the crosshairs of this. And
Yeah.
if Alberta crashes, then yeah, it's great for Mark Carney and Brookfield and the small handful of people that are invested in the same projects. But for Canadian people, especially in Western Canada, this is a fucking death knell. This is the
It
end.
is.
And
Absolutely.
and so I think that's the way a lot of people, at least people who are aware of what's happening, are looking at this. Like, this isn't, do we want to be part of Canada or have a new flag? It's like, do we want to survive or do we want to crash? What are we going to do?
I think it also goes further in this, just on a representation stage. I don't think a lot of people in Canada truly recognize the fact that our federation is absolutely skewed to the east, right? The Atlantic provinces, although representing a fraction of the population, have, I think, twice the voting power in terms of seats in the House of Commons than the Western provinces. You look at, I think Alberta, I don't remember the writing, but Alberta has the biggest writing. It has something like 230,000 people living in one fucking writing, which means one seat. Meanwhile, over here, like in Lac St. Louis, there's what, like maybe 50,000 people, and that's one writing. You know what I mean? So you guys are underrepresented heavily, like several orders of magnitude, and yet you're being effectively led by, well, let's call them, their name, the Laurentian elites. You know what I mean? It's just a bunch of people from the east that dictate the entirety of Canada. I get it. Once upon a time, when the Constitution and all the laws before that, British North America Act, the Westminster Status, whatever, all the laws that predate and eventually the Constitution Act, the East was the economic center. The East was the big boys, and the West didn't really have much of a negotiation power for these kinds of deals. But you look at today, and BC is a powerhouse. Alberta, guys. I did some research. I'm going to talk about it today on the podcast when I go record it. Alberta, if you guys were to cede today, you would become, on a real GDP per capita basis, the seventh richest fucking country in the world. Overnight.
Yeah.
Right? Overnight. Like, it's insane. This is not like, oh, well, we'll just straddle along and kind of like make do. No, no, no. You guys are joining the leagues of Norway, of Luxembourg, of fucking like Qatar, in terms of wealth. Like, it's insane. I don't know what you guys are waiting for. Look, Canada, and I made this point last week on our episode. Sadly, our microphone's fucked up, by the way. The audio quality was horrible. But you got to see, and I think this is what the people that want to push for a yes vote on a referendum should really go with. It's flip the script around. Not, oh, do you want to separate and become a country? Rather, if today you were an independent country already, and Canada came to the table proposing to join the Federation, would you say yes? What can they propose to you? Well, from now on, you will be sending billions of dollars in equalization payment to underperforming provinces. You will have to put up with red tape and regulations for exploiting your natural resources and your economy. You will have to be underrepresented in parliament and your voice be silent by a bunch of people out east who don't understand your realities, don't understand your values, and don't quite frankly share your heritage and your background. Would an Albertan say, oh yeah, sounds like a fucking great deal. What do you get in exchange? What do you get in return? So I think that's the angle that people should take. Rather, assume you're independent right now and Canada wanted you to join. Would it be a good deal? And if the answer is no, then hey guys, wake the fuck up. You have the opportunity, once in a lifetime perhaps, to forge your own path, to, have agency over your future, truly, without interference from the outside. And you're right, BC would probably secede as well and maybe form a union with the new Republic of Alberta, let's say. And God forbid, fucking Saskatchewan is joining right behind you guys as well. That's for sure. And all
Yeah.
Saskatchewan is like, fucking, let's go, boys, you know? And then that's it. Now you guys are a powerhouse.
So along those lines, I mean, the big discussion in Canada for decades has been Quebec seceding from the country
Yeah.
as well. Now, do you
Came
see
close.
that? Very close. I think it was I remember the referendum vote being like 49-51. Like it was like razor
Oh,
thin.
even more than that. So, but you were going to ask the question, do you think it's going to push Quebec to go independent as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So the first referendum was in 1980. So before I was born. I was born in 91. So 1980, that was more my parents. And I've been so fascinated with it. I've asked parents, grandparents, boomers that were around. And in 1980, we had in Quebec a really good government in place. It was our premier was a guy named René Lévesque, a little bit of a eccentric character, but like a strong leader that was willing to like face the music. And he surrounded himself with very competent advisors, like his Minister of Finance, his last name was Parizeau, amazing Minister of Finance, like good guy. And they had a really competent team, but it was so new and the movement was so novel that it failed, like the referendum failed. We held the second one in 1995. Now I was a little boy, don't remember it, but that one came fucking close. And we're talking 49.9 versus 50.1. We're talking
Wow.
0.2%. And there's a lot of controversy around it because apparently Ottawa kind of interfered with it. So they bust in people from like the eastern part of Ontario to go and vote or to fake stuff, whatever. Okay. I don't know. Conspiracy wasn't really there to see. But I'm not saying it's not far-fetched to think that Canada would have pulled any trick possible to make sure it didn't happen. But there was a movement then. There was an energy. There was a social unity and cohesion. Today, no, there isn't. There isn't. Partially, I would say, due to mass migration, partially due to the fact that Quebec lost a lot of economic strength. So back in the 80s and early 90s, Quebec was a very strong economic center. Montreal was the premier city in Canada, above Toronto. Toronto had yet to boom. Now it's Toronto. Montreal ain't the economic capital anymore. And it's actually partially due to the referendum. We used to be the center of all the corporate headquarters, all the banks, all the finance companies, all the mineral extraction. Sure, they would extract, in the north or out west, but they were headquarters and domiciled in Montreal. But then we went just a tad bit too fucking cocoa with our loco with our independence, but we push it further. We started pushing language laws and pushing very specific Quebec-centric legislations. And that just created too much red tape. And these companies and headquarters just said, fuck that. Uncertainty, sadly, is not profitable. So they left to Toronto. And then Toronto had their boom, and now Toronto is the financial center of Canada. But today, Montreal and Quebec just does not have the ability to survive on its own. I mean, we're the biggest recipient of equalization payments. We are we're deep in the hole, and without the federal government, aka without Alberta's money, Quebec would be bankrupt overnight. So no, I don't think. I think people will like try to push, but it's not viable. It's not a viable solution anymore for Quebec, sadly.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting insight because I did not know that. So it was the referendum itself that caused a lot of the economic power players to move to
Absolutely.
Toronto from Montreal.
Absolutely, because until before the 1990s, Montreal had more population than Toronto. I mean, look at pictures from Toronto in the 90s. It was like you had the CN Tower, you had like Union Station. I think the biggest building, to be honest, like tower building was like the Royal what's it called there? The Fairmont Hotel there, the whatever. It's like
It was a tall building. Yeah.
that's all whatever. Toronto was nothing. It was kind of like an industrial, kind of a blue collar worker place. It was not special at all. And yeah, that's what caused it. I mean, it was the second largest city, but Montreal was biggest in population, biggest in economy, biggest in terms of corporation. It was a truly world-class metropolitan city. Everything was written in English and French. There was an air of excitement, fun. Nightlife was rampant. I look at videos from like the 70s and the 80s, downtown Montreal. It's night and day. The Montreal my parents grew up in is way different than the Montreal today. And yeah, sadly, the referendum, but also the ultra nationalistic approach that subsequently followed after, like, killed it. Like, for example, I have a son, and my son will be forbidden from going to English public school in Quebec because me, as his father, I went to a French public school, even though his mother went to an English private, so she's Anglophone. So his mother, who doesn't really speak French, she went to an English school. She wants her son to be educated in English. Well, we're forbidden because one of the parents went to French school. And unless both parents went to the English public system, then the kid must automatically go to French. So the only way we could send our son to English school is if we go private. So we need to go fully private, not subsidized. And we're talking dozens and dozens of thousands of dollars per year for tuition. And that's for how many, God, many years. So those little kind of overreaching from the language. I mean, we have a language police in Quebec. Alberta might not know this, or the Western provinces, but we have something called the OQLF, Office Québécois de la langue française, or the Quebec, the French language office, protection of language. And I mean, I've been fined by them before. My company.
Really?
It's called BizBiz Global, but our product, our trademark is BizBiz Share. It's our product. And on our office, we have a big sign, big kind of like, a big sign, because our office is on the highway. So big fucking sign, every car that passes by can see it. And it's written BizBiz Share. It's a trademark. And we had to visit from the OQLF inspector, and they gave us 30 days to comply. And because it's written in English, share is an English word. And in Quebec, under Law 101, everything needs to be written in French. So I said, okay, but there's an exception for trademarks. So we should be good. And they said, true, you can keep BizBiz Share, but then you must add a French descriptive. So it would have to be something like, les entreprises BizBiz Share, la technologie BizBiz Share, something to describe the trademark, but in French. In the workplace, if your workplace is more, I think, than 15 employees, they lowered the threshold. It used to be 25, now they lowered it to 15 or even 10. Everything must be done in French. Computers, like your fucking computer setup, the phone setup, like the OS, French. Emails, internal fucking emails, French, and they can come at any time to ensure compliance. When you go to a restaurant, I mean, we had this a few years ago in Montreal that cracked people up. This Italian eatery, very popular Italian restaurant, right? It's named Buonanotte, right? Fucking sick. It's Italian as fuck. Well, on their menu, it was written pasta, and they got fined because pasta is not a French word. And it was called Pastagate here. Fucking Pastagate. They received a fine, like several thousands of dollars, because their menu said the word pasta. So this kind of stupid overreaching laws are what caused companies to get the fuck out of there. And then our economy crashed. I mean, Quebec's economy is fuck all now, really. So we say it's to protect our culture, but you know what? There's plenty of European countries that protect their culture, even though they have influence from so many other countries around them. And they don't have to be overbearing to the point of economic sabotage, which is what we do in Quebec.
And oh my God, I had no idea about any of that. That's so authoritarian and over the top and just out of control. Like, look, from a rational perspective, I understand it in terms of trying to preserve the language and preserve the culture. But you've also let in millions of people into the country, into your province.
But, and here's the big but, right? Quebec is the only province that has its own immigration department.
Okay.
Right? So, another thing Canadians don't know. Quebec negotiated with the federal government that we have our own immigration department. Now, it's stupid for us because we're sending tax money both to Canada to pay for an immigration department and Quebec to do immigration. And since constitutionally immigration is federal, Canada still reserves the right to the final call, the final say on every single file of an applicant. But the processing is done by Quebec, And Quebec puts an extra layer of not regulation, but qualification, which is you must either speak French or be willing to learn French within 6 months. Free of charge, of course. We'll pay for the courses. Obviously, we're socialist as fuck. But you get 6 months, and if you don't, you're kicked the fuck out. So what this led is that our immigration here is very different than the immigration in the rest of Canada. You look at the GTA, lots of Indians, lots of Pakistani, right? Brampton, you know what it is. So there you go. Lots of. I mean, Toronto has three Chinatowns. We only have one in Montreal. Okay,
Right,
so that says a
right,
lot.
right.
Vancouver, very, very Asian as well, very Chinese. We know that. Alberta, you guys have a lot of Filipinos. I remember that from my
Filipinos,
time.
but the Indians have definitely
They,
toppled
they
that
they've come in as
title.
well. All
Yeah,
right, I
yeah.
see. But in Quebec, it's going to be all the former French colonies. So a lot of African former French colonies, so countries that do speak French already. Lots of Haitians, and some Arabs from again former French colonies. So Lebanese and Syrians because they have a French background as well. But that's our immigration basically. Um, but ultimately, yes, sure, the language is protected, but the culture and our social cohesion, well, it is absolutely fucking not. And our crime rate is shooting up, but that's another story.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like Quebec has hamstrung itself and handicapped itself in a lot of ways.
Of
You know,
course, can't get out of its own way.
and is it just like a misguided pride in being Quebecois French, or is there something underlying it? Is there something more to it?
Well, I think it's culturally. I mean, if we go back, the history of it, and I'll go over it really quickly here because it could be a while. But Canada or the land that used to be Canada used to belong to France. It was called New France. And the economic center, the powerhouse was Quebec City. That's where we had our fort. And interestingly enough, to this day, it's still the official second residence of the monarch, right? There's an official residence in Quebec City, in the Citadel, in the military base. And eventually the British came. There was a big, nice war, and the French were winning. And the General Wolfe of England, was told to come back to England because who fucking cares about that colony anymore? Whatever, it's a waste of time. And he was proud and he decided, no, fuck it, I'll try one more time. Now, the French, being the French, they had heard that, the English were retreating. So they started celebrating and they opened the walls of the city, of the Citadel. They were drinking, partying, wine, cheese, whatever. What the fuck French people do. And they got surprised. They got surprised by the English on what's called the Plain of Abraham. And that battle, the Battle of the Plain of Abraham, was won by the Brits in 35 minutes. It took 35 minutes because the French were so fucking fucked up on baguette, I suppose. So,
Wine
they
and
just got caught.
baguettes.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Oh
And
man.
the English won and took over the city and the fort, and the French lost all of New France. And that's how Canada became, British. So now, why am I saying this? Well, to keep the French local population docile, the Brits did something very interesting. They passed what's called the Quebec Act. And the Quebec Act gave three concessions to the local population. The first is that they could keep speaking their native language, French. So that's why Quebec is French. Mm-hmm. Two, they can keep practicing their religion, Christianity, Catholic Christianity, because the Brits were Anglican, they were Protestant, And three, they can keep their civil law, because British law is common law. Well, in France, it's civil law. And to this day, this still stands. If you're a lawyer in Quebec, you cannot practice outside of Quebec. It's two different legal systems. Quebec is civil law. The rest of Canada is common law. But that started this whole process of Quebec was always a different culture within the Federation with its own very specific rules, from language to religion, which used to be huge. Religion used to be everything in people's lives, and law as well. The legal system's completely fucking different. So it isolated us and created this kind of silo effect where people from Quebec never really seen themselves as Canadians. We don't see Canadian flags here. We see Quebec flags. We honestly don't really celebrate Canada Day. We celebrate our own national day, which is a week before, called Saint Jean Baptiste. People here just don't really fucking care about Canada. They kind of even hate Canada and the Crown as well, for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's just created this division where they just have no desire to integrate in the country. And I mean, as you know, we have even at a federal level our own party called the Bloc Québécois, which
Yeah.
has no chance of ever forming government because we only run MPs or candidates in Quebec. So it just sucks away votes from oftentimes conservative voters, to
Yeah.
be honest with you. So it's just a weird place. But it has no chance of being independent anymore. It just really doesn't. So at this point, I think it's time that we move on. Um, Happily, most sovereignty supporters are still boomers who remember a better time, which is true. And they think if only we can go back to that, we'll have better times again. They'll die off. But the new generation, people that are under the age of like 55, don't give a fuck. Immigrants absolutely don't understand the history behind this, so they don't give a fuck either. So I think it's a movement that's just gonna naturally die. Is this good? Maybe. I mean, at the same time, I'm a little sad because it is still part of the history and the culture, and thus the death of our social cohesion. For better or for worse, if it united people here, I'm kind of for it. But now we're just going to continue to devolve into this melting pot, which I don't believe in a melting pot theory, to be quite honest with you. And there you go.
Wow. That is, it's interesting because I've always kind of seen Quebecers and Albertans the same way. They're just polar opposites, right?
Oh God, polar opposites for sure.
Albertans and British Columbians have always viewed Quebecers as kind of being like these uptight, French, snobby, and I know the French view people out west as being redneck hicks.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
But at our core, we're the same. Very independent minded. Don't really give a fuck about being Canadian. We are what we are. We are part of Canada, but we are our own thing, and and I think that's the viewpoint and the what's driving Alberta's desire to separate now.
But you guys have a chance right now. You have the momentum.
I think we do.
You have the economic ability, which is the most important part. You have this. Everything needs kind of a primer. Something needs like a precursor to spark a movement. And right now, just the fact that Canada does not do well for Alberta. Alberta is effectively just being ripped off. And it's going to be another 4 years of that with another government that disrespects and spits on your province and on your people and who calls them deplorables or vile or just like not un-Canadian. Like, now's the time. And I support it wholeheartedly. Absolutely. And I'm watching from afar, but in the event of secession, before it happens, I'm moving my entire fucking family to Alberta. I mean, I lived in Alberta in the past. I'll go back just so I can fucking.
Don't worry, I'll defend you. I'll defend you. I'll get between you and the lifted trucks. Don't worry, brother. I got you covered.
I just need a pickup truck. I need a shotgun in the back.
You already got the hat. You started. You got the hat, so you got the start.
Wait. Actually, and I have a question for you, right? Okay, so before I show you another hat that I have here, in the event that Alberta, so let's say next year you guys have a referendum, it passes, you somehow manage to negotiate with the other provinces, because that's another fucking story, manage to negotiate an outing, it passes, Alberta becomes, say, independent in 2030. Let's say January 1st, 2030, you guys are now officially a republic. Would you rather see Alberta as an independent republic, or would you rather start talking to the United States of America to join the Union?
To be honest with you, I don't see it being possible without the United States, because there's a lot that comes with secession. First of all, Eastern Canada is going to be cut off from its main source of money. So what that means is you have billions of dollars no longer going into the coffers in Ottawa. You have Quebec that, like you said, I mean, it just has no chance at independence, right? And then you have Atlantic Canada that could probably do fairly well on its own, but is going to also be hurting. So you're going to have an entire half of one of the largest land masses on Earth pissed off at the other half. So what we're going to have to avoid is a civil war, which is a very real probability, because we're talking Eastern Canada going from billions of dollars to $0.
Yeah.
Like virtually overnight. Not only that, but if Alberta votes to separate, if BC votes to separate, if Saskatchewan votes to separate, if we have a large period of time between the vote and actual separation, there's a lot that Ottawa can do to us in the meantime to try to bankrupt us.
Big time. Big time.
So we're going to need a military, a very strong one. And I just don't see how the West can separate without the United States' involvement, right? We need a military, we need a currency, we need tax bureaus, we need a lot of infrastructure. Not only that, but we also need something behind us that can guide us through the turbulence of independence. And look, Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, we have what the US needs, no matter what Trump says, no matter how many times he says it. Trust me, we have what he needs. So
big time.
So there's room for a negotiation where, hey, you help us amalgamate with the United States, right? And you provide us the resources necessary in order to do this. Otherwise, I just don't see how it's possible. Yeah, we will have all this wealth, but we won't have a military. We won't have our own currency. We'll have to create a currency. Like, I don't even know how to begin doing that. I'm sure there's people out there that understand it, but I mean, it's just there would just be so much complication and so many bumps in the road. And think about it now with people who have limited patience and a limited attention span, people who want like immediate results. They're not going to sit around and wait for 2 years while Alberta develops a currency and then gets it off the ground and adds it into the world market and goes through those ups and downs of people trading it. So I think that, to make a long story short, if the West were to separate, or Alberta, we would definitely need the United States.
Well, on that note, I will switch my hat to make Canada the 51st state.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I will say this. I'm very, very cautious of a North American Union. So this is going back to my conspiracy theory roots, but I read the documents that came out of the Bilderberg Group and the Club of Rome and the Council on Foreign Relations back in the 90s. And a North American Union was always on the docket. It was always in discussion, right? So I'm very careful with this. I'm very cautious of it because the central bankers, the guys who really run the world, i.e. Mark Carney, they have wanted a North American Union for a very long time. The ideal scenario for them, and you can already see Carney leading us into this, because he's attempting to create stronger relationships with the EU. He knows that more than likely a 51st state scenario is going to happen. So you can kind of see, and not only that, but Carney has billions invested in China. And I actually believe that China is the driving force behind a lot of this.
Oh, and so do I. China is the main force behind this.
Right. And so we are wandering down this path toward a North American Union, and what they've ideally always wanted was to create a unified world government, a unified world currency, and central bank digital currencies came into the picture recently over the last 5 years, right? I mean, the Canadian government was exploring a CBDC, as was the United States. So a central bank digital currency is in our future. Now, if you have a North American Union, let's say Canada is absorbed by the United States, Mexico enters into some sort of economic alliance with the Union under one USD-backed digital currency. Well, that's what they've wanted forever. That's what they've
And then
been moving
you
us toward.
control absolute commerce around the world at that point, you know?
Exactly. And not only that, but then, you have the EU that's already, well, the European Union, right? You have a number of countries that are already in the union. At that point, you have the central bankers and the political puppets of such basically position it as, well, look, we have a North American Union, we have a European Union, China and Russia are our enemy. So what we should probably do is become an economic powerhouse and streamline ourselves under one digital currency.
Yeah.
And that's that's where I see this all going. I see the North America and Europe eventually joining under one currency and under one trade system, because it's good. They're gonna present it as something that is beneficial for all. Think about the benefits to mankind. We're removing the red tape. We're cutting down the bureaucracy. Life will be much cheaper. But essentially, what it is it's one big control system.
I tend to agree wholeheartedly what you said. There are advantages to streamlining relations that way, but the big disadvantage, once again, is the check and balance on the control of power around the world. If you have hundreds of independent sovereign nations with their own desires, their own agenda, well, it inadvertently creates a system that will have conflict. Sure, war is never good. You want to avoid that. But it creates these checks and balances against everyone else and against the encroachment of an ever increasing stronger country. But if everyone's just joined under one big union, whether it be a strong union, a weak union, but we all share a common currency or the same system of whatever, then, well, it's just a simple, you're 1 degree of separation away from being able to control a entire continent, an entire planet at this point. And we know that people are corruptible, and there are people that want to amass more and more and more and more power. There are some definite evil motherfuckers in this world. So no, the same way I love the US because it's 50 independent states who retain most powers to themselves and only delegate a very limited, well-defined, well-enumerated rights to the federal government, right? And the US Constitution has the 10th Amendment, which is anything that's not listed explicitly in here or restrictions explicitly written in here. Well, that's the state. The state and the state and the people. I love that. But I think every country, or there should be a lot of that around the world. And yeah, no, that's a good point. It's a slippery slope. So then,
where do we go?
Should Alberta just remain because that's the thing too. Like I've spoken a little bit about the Alberta becoming independent, and I read the comments, and a lot of Albertans came in and kind of tuned in or gave their opinion, and a lot of them said, no, fuck it. Like, we don't want to join the US. You know, we're under someone's boot right now. We don't want to join someone else's boot, or be under just some different person's boot. We want to have our own way of life to be able to self-determine. And I get that too. But then, you bring some good points. Being a province is one thing. Being a country, you need to create things that you don't have, from military to, like you said, a currency. I mean, tax collection, I'm not too worried about that because you already have a provincial tax collector. It's just about maybe increasing, or expanding it. But you need border protection as well, right? That's not something that you guys do right now. Airports are run by the federal government. Treaties internationally. I mean, there's a lot of things to figure out.
Right. And so the shortcut is to work a deal with the United States, right? And that's a quick and easy deal because, like I said, in the West, we have what they need, right? The US.
Oh, yeah.
And sure. Look, if the West were to join with the United States, we would attract billions of dollars in investment overnight.
It would unleash the true economic powerhouse of the West. And you guys have so much more. You're already a powerhouse, but there's still so much more to offer it as just being, you got sticks in your wheels. You got red tape left and right.
Right.
And
And the thing is too, is think about it like this. BC and Alberta could be what it gets in between the USD and an eventual implosion, right? Because it's going to reinvigorate the American economy on that level
big
too.
time,
Right.
big fucking time. And at the same time, if it's BC, Alberta, maybe even Saskatchewan, then you know what? It's all connected. Alaska is finally it's finally
Well, that's
continental.
it.
It's
Yeah. I mean,
contiguous now. We're back to a contiguous US.
and so, I mean, Elliot, I know you got to run to do the right call.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you actually about your view for the future. So we'll do another episode. We'll come back in a few weeks to a
Let's
month
do
if you're
it.
available.
Absolutely. It would be a pleasure.
But yeah, I mean, it's dude, did you ever think, in closing, did you ever think you would live to see something like this?
I was hoping for a less turbulent life. I could have gone without the '08 crisis, the fucking pandemic, this last 10 years of liberal government,
Yeah.
nearly a nuclear war last week between Pakistan and India. Fucking. But hey, at the same time, I just try to remind myself ultimately that in spite of all the crazy shit going on in Canada and abroad and in the world, we're still sort of living in probably one of the best times ever, economically, socially speaking. We haven't faced any actual great famines, any great pandemic, like real deadly pandemic, any great wars. So, we have some shit to hammer out. I think we're going downhill and fast, but we're still living in one of the best times possible. So let that be a little bit of hope and, challenge or take on the challenges daily. Keep a fucking smile on your face, and let's all move to Alberta and fucking be cattle ranchers, baby, and oil
I'll
drillers.
fucking protect you. I'll protect you, bro. Don't worry, I got your back.
You're gonna give me safe harbor.
Well, yeah, no, don't worry. I'll keep you in my basement, and if Hans Landis shows up looking for you, don't worry. I won't give you away.
That's exactly the idea.
I won't give you away. I'll keep you under the floorboards. Don't worry, brother. I got you. No, I agree with you. I think this is one of the best times to be alive. It's very turbulent, and I think a lot of us are just waiting for the ride to end. We're just waiting for this thing to stop spinning so we can gather our wits and figure out a way forward.
Yeah,
and
for sure. I guess we just won the life in a weird way. We won the life that the boomers pretty much had, right? They came after World War II. They had an economic boom. They had no great wars. They had industrialization, modernization. They just lived through such a beautiful era, and we're just there in the aftermath, looking back, being like, yeah, times were better then. How can we get back here?
No, but that's I was just about to say that. I think the main issue that a lot of us have is that we watched our parents and grandparents thrive, and now we are here struggling, right? We're digging through the rubble trying to find something of value, and I think that's where a lot of the angst and the anger is stemming from in this country. And I think it's the West in general, but just speaking from where we are, I'm angry. I'm fucking furious. That's why I launched this, but that's why I started doing this podcast in the first place. Cause I'm like, I want to talk to people who know some shit, cause I'm an idiot and I would like to figure this out. Right.
And you wanted to talk to me. I'm a bigger idiot.
Oh, dude, shut the fuck up, man. I listen to the right call, every episode of the right call. I listen. And, in closing, I want to say this. When I first started doing this podcast, I did it because I didn't know where the fuck to find information on what was happening in this country. American politics and American culture dominate so much of media. And I was trying to figure out what was happening in Canada. And I was looking for podcasts and I couldn't find anything, at least that I found to be beneficial or resourceful or useful. And in the 2 years since I launched Brave New Normal, there have been a number of people come out of nowhere. The Right Call being one of them. I fucking love your guys' podcast. I am a regular listener.
Thank you.
You guys, I am so happy to see people getting motivated to do the same digs and to have the same conversations. I was hoping that eventually someday maybe a few more people might start doing this. Now there's a lot more, and the right call. I think you guys are part of a very small handful of podcasts coming out of Canada where you discuss the things that are happening here in a very insightful manner. And I just want to, everybody listening to this episode's over. You can stop this now. Go over and listen to the right call. You guys, you and Curtis, Travis, I think are fucking two of the smartest guys in podcasting in general. And I am so happy to see you guys out there doing this and tackling the issues the way you are, because you guys, I mean, every time I listen, I learn something. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't even fucking know that was happening. And I'm like doing this all the time. So I could only imagine what it would mean for, you know, people who are getting their information from 2-sentence tweets and thinking they know everything about the world, right? So that's my long-winded way of saying, guys, go to the Right Call podcast, audio streamers, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, go and listen. Elliot and Curtis, aka Travis, are two of the best guys doing it, like for real. And Elliot pumps out tons of incredible videos on Instagram, X, TikTok, right? Just tons of information jam-packed into like short little clips that, you know, usually would take me 2 hours to discuss here on this podcast, and Elliot does it in a minute. So anyways, there it is.
It's the magic of editing. It's the magic of editing. Thank you so much for the praise. And honestly, you know, one day you need to come down to Montreal and we need to have you on. I would love to have you on the Right Call.
Hell yeah, dude. Just let me know when, and I'm on the first thing out there, and tell Travis I'm coming.
We'll make it work. You know, this summer for real, Montreal is a great place in the summer. You know? And we'll work on your French, and we'll show you all the
see this is the thing, you're gonna have to hide me under the floorboards, brother.
I know the safe neighborhoods to bring you to.
All right, man. Well, listen, let's do this again real soon, because we didn't even get to some of the stuff I wanted to talk about today. So let's do a part 2.
Another one.
All right, man. Good, man. But for now, brother, thank you as always, and we'll talk again soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a good one.